Today we're going to be taking a look at a fantastic titanium 38mm field watch with a complication that was added to make this watch appropriate for spelunking. Now personally, the only times I've ever come anywhere close to exploring the depths of the earth is with a D20 in my hand, but today we're going to be taking a look at a cool watch from Boldr that even if you're not into cave exploration, I think it's got a lot to offer. Let's check out the Boldr Venture Wayfarer. Hey guys, welcome back to Just the Watch. My name's Dave. I live in Japan. I love to collect affordable watches and review them and talk about them, and that's really what this channel is all about. Field watches are one of my favorite types of watches, so when Boldr reached out and offered to send over one of their Venture line, I was excited to check it out, particularly because it's one that a lot of you guys have been recommending that I look at. I think the Venture line is sort of Boldr's entry-level watch. It's one of their most affordables, but it really packs a lot of value. You get a titanium case, a sapphire crystal, 200 meters of water resistance with a screw-down crown, and an automatic movement for right around $300. Now, Boldr did give me this watch to keep for free after the review is done, so big thanks to them, and that's why you saw the paid promotions flag at the beginning of this video. However, other than the watch itself, I didn't receive any compensation from Boldr, nor did they have any input into the content of this review. Now, this particular version of the Venture is called the Wayfarer because it adds the 24-hour subdial complication, which is what they say makes this a watch for spelunking. The idea being that if you're in a cave for days at a time, you might lose track of whether it's day or night outside, so having that 24-hour subdial allows you to figure that out. And I suppose in a lot of jobs with people working night shifts and stuff, it might come in handy for that as well. But I think the materials that are offered and the dimensions and the price all come together to make a really appealing package for pretty much anybody. Now, the version with this 24-hour subdial comes in at $330. I believe the original one without that is around $300. So if you don't like the 24-hour subdial, you can save some money and get that one. We'll talk about what I think this 24-hour subdial adds to the watch because I think it is a pretty cool complication. But let's look at the dimensions first. You are getting a 38mm diameter case, 20mm lugs, and 12.5mm thickness. And I think that 12.5mm is a little bit thick for a 38mm watch, but again, this has 200 meters of water resistance with a screw-down crown, so that thickness is totally appropriate for a watch that's basically got the same water resistance as most dive watches out there. And I think the water resistance and screw-down crown combined with the titanium case and the sapphire crystal makes this an incredibly rugged piece that can basically go anywhere. You're going to have no problem at all taking this watch swimming, and yet because it's titanium and because it's only 38mm, it really disappears on the wrist. It's very comfortable and easy to wear. Inside this watch features a Miyota 8217 movement. The 82X line is sort of Miyota's entry-level movement line, but they have a lot of different variations. This one, the 8217, comes with that 24-hour subdial and a 3 o'clock date. And I think that's really cool that Miyota is offering so many different options to micro brands. If you want to get a dial layout or a complication other than just your kind of simple three-hand with date or day date, I think they offer a lot more variety than Seiko tends to. Some of the older 8200 series movements from Miyota didn't offer hacking, so that meant that when you pulled the crown out, the second hand would continue to sweep. On this one it does. You get both hacking and hand winding, and this is a Japanese movement that is known for its reliability and decent amount of accuracy. The one downside that I've found to the Miyota 8200 series movements is that they are a little bit louder on the wrist in that the rotor is a little bit noticeable, and I have felt it a few times while I'm wearing it. But at this price range, and especially to add that 24-hour subdial complication on an automatic watch, I think that this is a fantastic movement to feature. So what does that 24-hour subdial bring to the watch? Well, one, I think it really shakes up the design a bit. It's just a lot more interesting than a standard three-hand. Having that subdial at 9 o'clock, interrupting the symmetry of the watch, and even cutting into the 10 and 8 o'clock markers. It's not a look that everybody's going to like, but it is an interesting look, and I think for a lot of people it will be an appealing look. If you want something that's a little bit more unique, a little bit more distinct, this is one way to do it. So just visually having that 24-hour subdial on there, I think it does add something to the watch. On the functional side of things, most people don't use a 24-hour subdial to actually tell whether it's day or night outside. Most people already know that, and I don't think I've ever needed it for that. but I do use it very frequently when setting the watch, and if you have a collection of automatic watches, you know that you are often setting the time and dates on watches. Having a 24-hour subdial lets you know exactly what time the movement is pointing to, which really helps in setting the date and time. It helps you to avoid changing the date in an unsafe position on the movement, because you shouldn't be doing date changes when the watch is in the middle of the night when it's kind of getting ready to turn the date over. So this will quickly let you know whether or not you're in the AM, PM side of the 12 hours and whether it's safe to change the date or not. And it just makes it easier in setting the date in the first place. So the reasons I might opt for this version instead of the standard one would be because I want something that looks a little bit cooler, a little bit more unique, and I find that subdial placement appealing, and because it does add a tiny bit of functionality. Let me know what you guys think of 24-hour subdial complications in the comments down below. Especially tell me how you use them, because I'm really curious to see how other people might be using this sort of often neglected complication. Now, other than that kind of interesting placement of a 9 o'clock 24-hour subdial, the rest of the dial is very clean. You're getting a white textured dial on this one. It does come in a lot of other color options, so you got some choices there, but I really like the white dial, and I like that they have done a black outline around the hands and on the markers. This does feature 12-hour Arabic markers, which again, everything outlined in black gives it some contrast, and then they're all filled in with sort of this sort of like light brown lume color, which I think looks really good. In particular, I like the handset that they've gone with. It's really beautiful syringe-shaped hands that maintain a really kind of rectangular look. And given that this is a white dial watch, they've done a great job of making the hands stand out with a nice thick black outline and a nice pop of color on the orange-tipped second hand. The hands and markers are also lumed, and the lume is, pretty good. I definitely appreciate that they filled in the numbers on the watch with lume, so it's not just little dots that you're getting. The numbers themselves actually glow in the dark. However, the numbers are very thin, so that doesn't allow them to put a lot of lume in there, and the lume on this watch is not super bright. I'd say for a field watch, it's about average. It's about what you would expect. It's functional. It allows you to read the watch in the dark, but it's not going to blow you away. When I ran this watch in a lume comparison with two other watches that do have a pretty impressive level of lume, it came in last place with a J score of 4, which again, I think is around where you're going to find a lot of field watches that have just a kind of average amount of lume. Seiko and Orient tend to be a little bit overachievers in the lume category, and I was hoping that this might punch up a little bit higher because Boldr did score really well with their Odyssey dive watch that I had in for a review a couple months back. Still, it looks really cool in the dark, and it's very functional. Another really cool thing about this watch is the case design, and I think this is something that Boldr has done really well in designing kind of their own language when it comes to cases and dials and all their pieces and parts. It definitely has their own style. This is not like an homage of a classic watch. It doesn't even draw a lot of vintage looks from previous watches. It looks like they've kind of designed it themselves. It's very modern, it's very fresh, it's very forward looking. So if you want to get away from sort of the traditional military style field watches and into something that's a little bit more geared towards sporting and adventure, I think that's kind of the flavor that Boldr's going for, and they do it really well. This is a case that combines some really beautiful curves in the cushioning, but then some sharp angles on the lugs and on the bevels. It's fully bead blasted in titanium, so it has a very tough, rugged look to it. The crown operates very smoothly, and it has a really cool knurling that again kind of gives it a really kind of industrial, very rugged look to it. I think the lugs are also very interesting. It almost looks like someone's just taken a knife and cut the side of the case on either side to open up a space for the lugs. And they offer a lot of clearance for putting a NATO strap into it. This one does come standard with the NATO strap. However, if you want to upgrade to a titanium bracelet, they also have that available as an option. The NATO strap is a very nice NATO strap. It's very thick. It feels very tough. Features titanium hardware and just enough length that I can tuck it in on my 7.5-inch wrist. The one thing that is a bit of a challenge is that it adds a lot of height to an already slightly chunky watch. On the NATO strap, you're getting a full 16 millimeters from the bottom of the NATO to the top of the crystal, which I think does make it look a little bit awkward on my 7.5-inch wrist in particular. This 38 millimeter cushion case I think wears a little bit smaller than a lot of other cases that I've seen, probably because proportionally the dial is a little bit smaller than you would find on a standard case design. So I never quite got used to the look of the size on my 7.5-inch wrist, and then to see it kind of standing so tall on that NATO strap stretching that full 16 millimeters, it just always looked a little bit awkward, even if it felt very secure and very light and very comfortable. I found myself more often wearing it on a smooth orange rubber strap that allowed me to maintain that 200 meters of water resistance and kind of slim the watch down a bit. So for me, that sort of awkwardness of the size was probably the biggest weakness of this watch. But it's kind of a double-edged sword because that cushion case and the dimensions and everything really add a lot of personality to this watch. And I think the uniqueness of this watch is also one of its biggest strengths. I often get a little bit tired of seeing the same design cues over and over again, and particularly when you're building a collection of watches and you're looking for, different looks and different things to add in. A unique design really brings a lot to the table. And again, when you consider everything that Boldr is putting into this watch, that titanium case, that 200 meters of water resistance with the screw-down crown, sapphire crystal, an acceptable level of lume, and this totally unique design, I think they're giving you a lot more than most other brands would at this price range. So if you're in the market for a field watch, particularly one that's a little bit smaller diameter, I think this is a really strong one to check out. So I'll be leaving links to these down below. You guys can go check it out. Another thing you should definitely check out is the t-shirt shop, where you can go and get this shirt and support the channel. I've sort of put together a lot of different designs that I think that people who are into watches will like, so check that out as well. Also, make sure you leave me a comment down below. Let me know what you think of the 24-hour subdial, and in particular, what you use it for if you have one. That's going to wrap it up for today. Thank you guys for watching, and we'll see you next time. Bye.